Hello and welcome to the Pittsburgh City Council budget hearings. I am Councilman Kahari Mosley and I chair the Committee on Intergovernmental and Educational Affairs. For this hearing, we will hear from Pittsburgh Water and the Pittsburgh Land Bank. I would like to invite those from Pittsburgh Water to join us at the table. And while Director Pickering is joining us, I ask that our Budget Director, Peter McDevitt, give us a brief overview of the department.
Thank you, Councilman. Pittsburgh Water's mission is to support our region by protecting public health and the environment through the delivery of safe and reliable water services with a commitment to future generations. Their core values include stewardship, ethics and integrity, accountability, safety, and equity. Pittsburgh Water has an 8-member board. Currently, Councilperson Erica Strasburger serves as the vice chair of the board. In the operating budget, through a cooperation agreement, the city and Pittsburgh Water true up costs on services that delivers to each other. For example, Pittsburgh Water pays the city for their portion of the annual pension costs, budgeted at $2.3 million per year, and also for various permits for work such as stormwater permits from PLI. The city pays for water services to their hundreds of facilities. The 2026 budget for water is $8.5 million. That's for the entire plan. It's $8.5 million every single year. It does not go up at all. Just want to point that out. Shared between Pittsburgh Water and Penn American. So that's not just for Pittsburgh Water. This is water bill total. 2025 anticipated costs for water are estimated at $13 million. That's all I have.
Thank you, Director McDevitt. And now for Pittsburgh Water, please provide us a formal introduction, including your title, and feel free to begin your presentation.
Excellent. Great to be with you. I'm Will Pickering. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Pittsburgh Water. And thank you for having me this afternoon to go over our 2026 budget. I do want to flag that our Board of Directors has not approved our operating and capital budgets. However, we do have preliminary numbers that will be shared with you all today. And I also want to use this opportunity just to go through some recent accomplishments over the past year. As a reminder, and Director McDevitt did a great job of referring to us as Pittsburgh Water, we've approached about a year since our rebrand from what was often referred to as PWSA, the acronym of our legal name. We did engage with our customers and identified that there was a fair amount of confusion about who we are and the services we provide. We felt that a simplification, drawing on elements of the logo that we already had, made sense. And, we're really proud to be Pittsburgh Water. And I've been really impressed with our staff kind of rallying around this refreshed brand that we have established. We touched on the mission, vision, and values at the opening. I do just want to emphasize, as we approach things like our budget and our project prioritization, we are very focused on future generations. A lot of the issues that we are attempting to address through our budgets and capital programs are at root, at times, a previous failure to think about those future generations and perhaps putting off investments. This is the generation of both our ratepayers and residents that are funding the work. In the leadership team at Pittsburgh Water, we are committed to not just fixing what is broken, but making investments that will span not just our lifetimes, but those of our children, potentially their children. A snapshot of who we are and when we talk about the assets that we are responsible for operating and maintaining. We have, what we call about 116,000 customers. That is obviously not the individuals that we serve. We serve about 500,000 people, but those are the accounts. So those are the individual connections we have throughout the city of Pittsburgh. We have them broken up into different categories. We have our combined customers who receive water, sewer, and stormwater services from us. We have customers that receive their drinking water from other utilities, the largest group of those being in the South Hills neighborhoods who are served by Pennsylvania American Water Company. And then we have stormwater-only accounts. These are accounts that do not have a water or sewer connection. However, they are assessed a stormwater fee because they are producing stormwater off of their property that we are responsible for managing. We sit at about 420 full-time employees currently. We've over the years grown our internal capacity through efforts to internalize project management and engineering services that were previously outsourced, as well as growing in certain key areas to ensure that we can deliver our projects and deliver high-quality services. We can produce up to 100 million gallons per day. However, as of the last month, we're producing something more along the lines of 60 million gallons per day. So we have more capacity than we need to pull water from the Allegheny River. When you try to contextualize the miles of water lines, you could, if you were to connect them all and make them into a straight line, as you can see here in this slide, it would be enough to get us from Pittsburgh to Orlando. We have even more mileage of sewer lines. That's enough to get us from Pittsburgh to Denver. So it's just a vast amount of water and sewer infrastructure. This area at the bottom are the assets that are often forgotten about unless they're an issue, but nearly 30,000 manholes, 25,000 approximate catch basins. These are the storm drains that are in our roads. We are responsible for maintaining 7,500 fire hydrants and approximately 19,000 valves, which are really critical to making sure that we can operate our system responsibly. The map up on the board represents those different service areas that I mentioned, the light blue being our combined customers who receive water, sewer, and stormwater services. The lighter shaded area are those areas where drinking water is provided by another utility. At the very north tip, that bright green section is the borough of Millvale. We actually own the drinking water system within Millvale and bill them directly for that. That is something that was established in the early 2000s. And then those points on the map, the red teardrop-shaped, there's probably a better word for that than teardrop, but those red areas, those indicate key elements of our water distribution system and locations where our employees operate out of within the city of Pittsburgh. One key area of progress over the past several years, but we've made a lot of progress in 2025, is related to our water reliability plan. This is a suite of projects that are mandated under a state consent decree. We have already completed elements that include relining and covering the Highland 2 reservoir. That is the covered reservoir in Highland Park that's protected by the fence. That is not the open reservoir. And then we have rehabilitated large diameter water mains that feed from our pump station on Washington Boulevard up to Highland Park. We are also nearing completion of the Highland Reservoir Pump Station. For those that have been near Highland Park on Mellon Terrace, this is a brand new facility that's going to provide additional pumping capacity for about a third of our customers. We're really excited to get that on board. That will provide additional resiliency and reduce the risk for low pressure events for our customers. Now, we kicked off, this photo was from only a few weeks ago, of the groundbreaking event we had at the water treatment plant for what's called the ABC project. Those projects total over $200 million of investment. We are rehabilitating the historic Aspenwall pump station. We are giving it all new electrical gear and pumps. Across the river on Washington Boulevard, we are building a brand new facility that will pump that drinking water from the Allegheny uphill to Highland Park. And then we are creating a bypass pipe that is going to allow us to continually provide safe drinking water while we replace the clear well. The clear well is a single, in essence, storage tank buried underground at our water treatment facility. It's required for us to properly disinfect our drinking water. It is approximately 120 years old, and due to the way it was constructed, we can't take it offline to maintain it. So our ultimate goal is to replace that clear well with something more modern. But in order to do that, we need the ABC project completed, and that's why we're estimating that we can begin that work on the clear well in the 2030s. Just want to briefly touch on, over the years, we have highlighted our improvements in environmental compliance. Some of the previous failures of the organization are rooted in either an ignorance of our responsibilities to environmental regulations or lack of capacity to satisfy them. We've made tremendous progress in this area over the last 3 to 4 years. We have satisfied several state and federal orders. One was related to lead that kicked off actually in 2017. Our corrosion control program that is providing record low lead levels, which we'll get into, allowed us to satisfy that 2017 consent order that we had with the state. We also had an agreement with EPA related to Clean Water Act violations that mandated an independent monitor and several other improvements to environmental compliance. We satisfied those terms and did so in such a fashion that we were actually able to exit that agreement early. So we are really sunsetting on some of the mandates. Quite honestly, the sins of the past. We have developed an organization that is going to ensure that regardless of who is leading the organization, that we don't repeat those mistakes which come at the expense of public health and our ratepayers. I mentioned corrosion control. This is a graph that shows where we are in terms of the treatment we're providing our water at properties that still have lead service lines. That yellow dot represents the period in time in 2019 when we began to apply orthophosphate to the drinking water. It's widely accepted across the country and internationally as an effective means of treating water when there are lead service lines still in place. As you can see, within the next year of that application, we saw lead levels dip, and then we have over time continued to drive that level to what is now our lowest in history at 2 parts per billion. I do want to point out, this testing is at worst case scenario homes. So this is not a snapshot of the average customer. We are going to homes where we know there is lead, and most times we are not detecting any lead. And when you do the calculation, even with those small detections, we get at that 2 parts per billion at the 90th percentile level. It's a bit of a wonky math that's required for those regulations, but the short story is we have never been better at treating our water for lead. We are fully recognizing, though, that there is no safe level of lead. So this is the interim step until we can replace all of our lead service lines. We have a goal of doing so and a plan for doing so by the end of 2027. We have replaced over 13,800. I'm really hopeful we get to 14,000 by the end of the year of the public lines. And as you can see, well over 10,000 private lines. When we encounter a lead service line, we replace it regardless of ownership, which is pretty atypical compared to other municipalities and how they treat lead service line replacement. There is no mandate that we do this work. This is a priority we have repeatedly heard from our customers, and one that has been affirmed by our board of directors to just continue to get that work completed, especially while there's federal funding available, which I'll get into here briefly. In terms of rates, I want to remind members of council and the public that we have a really holistic suite of assistance programs for customers that may be having a one-time issue keeping up with their bills or are at an income level below 200% of the federal poverty level where they receive a lower monthly bill. We also have flexible payment arrangements and forgiveness for past due debt if they make future payments on time. That last bullet references our program that we have for individuals that want to have their lead service line replaced, but perhaps we're not planning to have a construction project in their neighborhood for some time. They can hire a plumber and they are reimbursed at a minimum of $1,000, but if they're income eligible, they can have all of that work reimbursed. I will note that these slides represent our current rates. We are going through the rate case process where we proposed a rate increase to the Public Utility Commission in the spring. It has been reviewed, and we have reached a settlement with the various parties. However, the next step is approval and review from an administrative law judge and then the Public Utility Commission. Those approvals have not gone into place. So these are the official rates as it stands and will up through February. This first slide represents the varying costs depending on water usage for customers that are at that 200% or below the federal poverty level. If they are what we deem our average customer using 3,000 gallons of water per month, They currently pay $50 for water, sewer, and stormwater. For the non-build-out discount program, customer using 3,000 gallons per month, with, again, the water, sewer, and stormwater charges just a tick over $100 per month. I will note that these rates do not include Alcosan charges. Those are determined by Alcosan's board of directors. We collect those charges on their behalf. It's based on their water usage, and we actually remit Alcosan 100% of what is charged to customers. Customers pay at varying degrees. The authority actually eats that bad debt on an annual basis. So there is that sort of operating dynamic as we shift money between us and Alcosan. They are paid in full. Sometimes our customers don't pay us in full. Shifting to the 2026 operating budget, you can see here in this pie chart the core areas of investment. The largest one is likely no surprise. It is debt service on our existing debt issuances. We also have core areas of repair and maintenance. Obviously, those costs cannot be capitalized. We are doing more maintenance and repair to the system than we ever have. We expect to continue to see that grow. But at the rate that we are investing, we're looking for outside resources. We're also looking, we utilize PAYGO capital, but debt service is going to continue to be a growing amount of our operating budget, and one that we're monitoring closely. We do believe in 2026 we'll continue to meet all of our metrics. We'll have the resources to be able to do what is expected of us and advance our projects and meet our internal financial policies. Shifting to the capital improvement plan, this is a photo. I mentioned the Highland 2 Reservoir Liner project. This was midway through construction a couple years ago, and that is actually the liner material that contractors were adding to the drained reservoir. If you went out to the reservoir now, obviously you would not see that, but just you can see the scale of that project and those people, how small they are. It is I believe 120 million gallon reservoir, so that was a massive undertaking there. Since I already mentioned the water reliability plan, lead service line replacements are an area of capital investment, and again will be through 2027 when we get all of the lead out. We continue to invest in stormwater projects. This year we completed a project on Braywood Way. And then that photo on the right is actually a disinfection station located at our Lanford Reservoir that is actually located in Shaler. The water makes its way from our water treatment plant through a large diameter main, and it is stored at the Lanford Reservoir in Shaler. And then we provide additional disinfection along the way before that water it makes its way to customers in the north side. We do have a capital improvement plan of 5 years. Here is the next 3. In 2026, we expect another record level of investment on the capital side of things. The water reliability plan being a large driver, as well as you can see lead service line replacement, and then the remaining items. Again, that water reliability plan, the completion is mandated under a state consent decree. This is not discretionary work. We agree with the state that we need to get it done, but that will be a driver here, obviously, in the next 3 years. And then we would expect at the conclusion of the lead service line replacement program, we will continue to replace water mains, but lead service lines will not be a component of the capital plan. And then just to round things out, I mentioned every effort that we're making to identify funding. We have been the largest beneficiary of the state's infrastructure bank called PenVest. And you can see the numbers here between loans and grants. Obviously, our preference is grants, but the loans are also very significant because you can see the interest rate on average is just a bit over 1% compared to if we were to go to the municipal bond market and pay something around 5%. So extrapolate that over a 30-year borrowing period. At that level of investment, by using PenVest, we believe we will save our ratepayers over $1 billion. So our ability to really to tap PenVest has said that we have helped them also up their game. A lot of other utilities within the state are now engaging with PenVest and using that funding. The $115 million is primarily related to lead service line replacement. bipartisan infrastructure law funds that were dedicated during the Biden administration find their way to the state. They're allocated each year, and then we compete at Penvest for those dollars. We've done a great job in doing so, and we're going to continue to do that again through 2027. We've also found some other innovative ways of trying to utilize Penvest for security projects and projects that are not necessarily related to just water and sewer. So we found this to really be an excellent, again, infrastructure bank that can drive those debt service costs down over time. So we believe we have a diverse capital improvement plan. It's obviously weighted more in the drinking water side due to that consent decree work and the risk of failure in some of those assets that I mentioned at the drinking water treatment plant and our distribution system. Very proud of our team in finding over 50% of external funding to fund that capital improvement plan, and the bond rating agencies have agreed with our approach. They've recently affirmed or upgraded us based on our diversified approach. So thank you for indulging me in hitting on those highlights, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And before we go into questions, I just wanted to note for the record that we're joined by Councilwoman Warwick, Councilman Charlin, Councilwoman Strausberger, and Council President Lavelle. And Council President Lavelle, you have the floor.
Thank you for being here. We've had some exhaustive PWSA conversations recently, so I actually don't have many questions. I just have technical questions, actually. The difference between the customer impact bill discount and the residential customer impact program, this is restricted to 200% AMI? Did I hear that correctly?
That's federal poverty level.
Okay.
Yes.
And what is this one restricted to? The residential customer
That's
impact?
just average. That's just our typical rate. That doesn't
Got
have.
you.
That's the right undiscounted rate.
So this is what someone based on the federal rate could apply to.
And then there is, I didn't have it in the presentation, but for you to be aware, if someone is at 50% or below, there's even a steeper discount than what was on the bill discount slide that I could provide to you.
Okay. There are spots throughout the city where PWSA has done work, and then after a month or so, it's sort of patchwork where you've had to go into the middle of a street, and then the patchwork will become uneven and sometimes sink. Who should someone call about getting that repaired?
They should call us. We can.
So I normally call Rachel for things, but I don't want to just blow her up for something as simple as that. Is there a general number?
That's the right way for us to do it. Yeah, she'll put it into the pipeline with all of. We have a really good tracking system for those issues. Sometimes there's an explanation as to why we haven't been out there, but sometimes we just don't know the condition has shifted on us in that period before we can do the final restoration.
Okay, and the same for catch basins?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm trying to remember the order of which folks came. I don't know if anyone has any specific scheduling, so we'll just go down the table that way. Councilwoman Strausberger, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given our long conversations in the last couple of weeks, I don't have too many questions. I guess one thing that is on a lot of people's mind is with the some of the opportunities with Alcoasand funding stormwater changing or shifting or going away, however you want to say it, with GROW grants no longer available, and with a real focus, an intentional focus on the ABC project, on lead lines. How do you see the city, Alcoasand, and Pittsburgh Water working together in the next 5 or 10 years on stormwater? How do you see that approaching? And just for everyone's sake, I sit on the stormwater subcommittee of the Pittsburgh Water Board. We talk about this often, but wanted to daylight some of, no pun intended, daylight some of the conversations around how Pittsburgh Water is thinking about, stormwater as a city.
Sure, and thank you for asking that question. I think we typically include a slide related to what we call wet weather. 2/3 of our system is a combined sewer system, which means that stormwater coming off the streets and roofs, et cetera, are combined with sewage in a single pipe. And part of Alcosan's clean water plan is to address combined sewer overflows. We also have an obligation to address combined sewer overflows, and we have been talking to EPA and the Department of Justice about what a program could look like to satisfy Clean Water Act requirements. And it is in all likelihood going to take the form of another consent decree. So we have a consent decree related to the water reliability project. We have been talking about and have expected for some time an equivalent of sorts on the sewer and stormwater side. Due to change in the administration and obviously everything here this year with federal government shutdown, we haven't made as much progress with our federal partners as we would like to really define what that program could look like. But our hope is that we get some clarity on what those expectations are so that we can then begin to develop projects that not just address combined sewer overflow, but we can be opportunistic and try to address flooding and backup issues that can hurt communities as well, but may not have that strict regulatory requirement. The sort of potential financial obligation for a consent decree is very large, and as I've presented today, we're already at a record level of investment. We're all very mindful of the rates that we're charging customers. So we're in a bit of a waiting game to develop what our future stormwater programs will look like at scale. However, in the meantime, we still are advancing design and monitoring work to go after specific areas that have already been in the pipeline. 4 Mile Run being one of them, where we're trying to determine whether existing investments have been effective, or if additional investment is required in that area to provide things like flooding protection. So we're certainly you're not taking our eye off the ball. The GROW grants were helpful for us. However, the way that they were designed, they were on a reimbursed basis. So we still needed to have the money in hand to build the projects. It's helpful to get reimbursed. However, unlike Penvest, it wasn't as if they awarded grant money that we could then build the project. So we would love to, we are in continued discussions with Alcosan to see how we can work together on a number of issues. Regionally, we would, love to be, in a position where we're talking about it, maybe a round 2 of GROW or something along those lines to help fund projects, because we have benefited from that. So, unfortunately, and this is, now a while I've had to say this, we're in a little bit of a waiting game with the federal government to determine the exact direction and scale we're headed with some of these projects.
Just to follow up, what are currently some of the opportunities for funding for stormwater, water, wet weather at the federal, state, or even at the local level as you see them?
It's certainly...
even in generalities.
Right. It's certainly more limited than the traditional drinking water and sewer reconstruction projects. Low interest loans are available through Penvest for stormwater projects. We have not put forward an application there. We have been talking to the Army Corps of Engineers at length, as well as DEP directly, because they have some programs we might be able to avail ourselves of to fund some projects like this. We have used GROW historically when it was available, so it's not as easy to fund some of these projects, or as straightforward, because they're also relatively more complicated than what we call a linear project, a pipe-based project. But we are aggressively going after external funding across the board.
Thank you. And just to shift gears quickly, for the customer assistance programs, we know that every utility, even Pennsylvania American Water, like as an entity that also represents or covers city customers in the south of the Mon, but also other utilities have customer assistance programs. Does Pittsburgh Water cross-promote any of these, or has there been traditionally a way to do that? Has been an agreement with any of the utilities?
Yes, we have been working primarily with the other, what we call regulated utilities by the PUC, which would be Duquesne Light, Peoples Gas. and Pennsylvania American Water for a way to cross-enroll and actually have a universal service application. So our Director of Customer Service, Julie Meckling, was actually part of the working group that helped develop this process so that we can cross-enroll, or at the very least, while we have someone on the phone, can live transfer them to the other utility to enroll in their their programs for assistance. So that is something that I don't think it's quite perfect yet, but we are all now talking so that customers don't have to take all these individual steps. And quite honestly, the programs have different requirements for documentation to confirm their income. The goal here is that you have a sort of single application, single set of information, and then you can enroll in fewer steps. So we are doing that now.
I think that exhausts my questions for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Charla, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, thank you for being here today. I feel like I always start off kind of a glowing thank you of the team that you have assembled, and folks like Rachel and Rebecca that have been able to help me all throughout the year, and I really do appreciate the level of service that we receive from the city here. It's generally very easy to work with the authority, and I really appreciate the folks underneath you there. I do want to talk a little bit about some restorations, which is, I'm in the kind of the bullseye of a lot of lead line replacement and sewer separation projects that we're going through here, and it will be great when it's done. It would be great if we could get there sooner. I'm curious, when you decide on subcontractors, how do you make those kind of decisions on who is going to be doing this work?
We're required for construction contracts to have low bid. So we set the requirements through the invitation for bid process. However, we are required, as long as those contractors are qualified and responsible, which is a defined term,
Sure.
Then we're required to award to the low bid.
Okay. Yeah. And I generally, especially as this year has gone on, I have been able to reach out to the folks at Foligno, and they've been willing to help, but there seems to be a middleman of some sort, WP.
That might be WSP.
That could be
potentially. So the way we structure our most of our construction projects is that we award the construction contract to a contractor, and then we hire a construction management and inspection firm to be there to monitor the work, just because Pittsburgh Water does not have an inspection crew internally that can be everywhere they are. So that's in all likelihood the middleman that you're referring to.
Okay.
It's a construction management firm working for us.
Gotcha. And that actually was my other question there is kind of who is out there inspecting the work, who is making sure that things are going well. And that's the WSP.
I'll double check in
Okay.
that particular project. We use a number of different firms for that work, but there is always, on the projects like you've referenced, there are certainly firms there, who are hired for that purpose.
Okay, perfect. That answers that question there. The other thing, I'm curious. I remember years ago if someone was getting a shut-off notice or was having trouble with their bill, we were also notifying them to our financial counseling centers through your billing. Is that something we're still doing?
That's a great question. I don't know off of the top of my head, but I can certainly research that. I can't imagine we would have strayed from that, but I can double check.
To me, it seemed like a really great service that if somebody's having trouble with their bill, that this was an opportunity for them probably their water bill was not the only bill that they were having trouble with. So, using that as kind of a gateway into what else can we help you with, and how do we move you forward? If it is not something that we are currently doing, I would like to get back to that. I think that's, a great opportunity for us in the city there. So with that, that's really all I have. I appreciate you being able to communicate with us and with me throughout the year here, and I look forward to being done with those projects over there. But we'll look forward to working together, as this year ends and into next year. So thank you.
No, thank you for your flexibility, recognizing we're keeping you busy in your district this year, and thank you for recognizing the team. Really honored to lead a great group of people.
You certainly do have a great group under you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Thank you, Councilman. Okay, Councilwoman Warwick, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for the detailed presentation. Lots of good work on lead lines and such. I did want to ask some more about stormwater. How much does Pittsburgh Water collect in stormwater fees each year?
I do not have that number offhand, but I could certainly get it quickly for you.
Okay. Do you know, are those fees directed then to stormwater projects?
Yes.
Exclusively. Okay.
Well, stormwater, I mean, the definition of stormwater projects, it's not excluded to green infrastructure projects. It's stormwater operational improvements. So it's projects, it has to be designed or dedicated to projects related to our stormwater system, not necessarily new capital projects, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, so it would be interesting to see a breakdown of that, right? Like where stormwater projects are being done around the city.
We have that. We could certainly provide it. We've pulled it before.
Okay. And another question is, do we bill, so, we have the stormwater fee, right, on homeowners, et cetera. Do we bill PennDOT for the stormwater created by the, their highways and such going through the city?
No, my understanding is legally and as well as sort of national practice is not to bill municipalities or states for the road impervious surface specifically. However, we do bill all users for real property that they have. So PennDOT owns facilities and parking lots and things within our service territory, as do other governmental bodies. So we are recuperating stormwater fees from that, but the roadway itself is not included in the impervious area calculation.
So, because, the city, and again, I may be wrong on this, but it seems that the city, right, DOMI, or, in our streets, we build into our streets sort of the storm, like the mechanisms for stormwater to, run into the sewer or whatever, right, in our streets. Does PennDOT do that? Like, is there stormwater management infrastructure?
They do. When they construct new facilities, they include the inlets and catch basins and connect scuppers, things coming off of bridges. They do, and they have a PennDOT state standard for stormwater management within their project standards.
Okay.
We'd love there are opportunities for them to do more.
Yeah.
And I know in your council district, that's a topic of conversation and focus for us. There are opportunities as they're building things. We would encourage them not just to build to their standard, but use it as an opportunity to do more to alleviate some of the neighborhood flooding issues.
Yeah. So the PUC recently published the rate settlement. Is that recent? I just got this email from someone. So, and I'm looking at it, and in it on page 8 and 9, there are some requirements around stormwater. For the stormwater, it says that Pittsburgh Water will annually report progress on current stormwater activities as well as information relating to specific planned stormwater activities as identified in the capital improvement plan, with the following calendar year and stormwater-related public events and outreach on its website. And then it also says that Pittsburgh Water will hold biannual stakeholder meetings to discuss the status of priority areas and projects and/or initiatives. And then finally, that Pittsburgh Water will use its best efforts to maximize all sources of external funding and will explore the availability of any grants, et cetera. Is that?
So it sounds like those are terms we agreed upon in the settlement.
Okay.
So the process moving forward, as I mentioned during my presentation, we put forward our proposal. The intervening parties including Pittsburgh United and others who had questions related to stormwater. They asked us questions. We then proposed the settlement. That settlement agreement, the universal, all parties agreed upon, that has been public. It sounds like perhaps that's what you're referring to. And those are all, if assuming those all sound familiar to me, they're all in all likelihood what we committed to. I just would point out that we still have to go through the administrative law judge approval and commission approval for those terms.
Okay. But, assuming that this does go through, I definitely would like to see if those reports can be shared, right? Specifically for my district around 4 Mile
absolutely.
Run, right? But, and I think a biannual meeting updating on the, and I do appreciate the work that your team is doing on giving me the monthly updates, but I think having those for the public so that we can really see the progress, right? The progress that's being made. I know there was some desire to have a meeting right now, in the near term. I don't necessarily think that a meeting without something new to tell people is worthwhile, but and I know that some of the big asks are, Panther Hollow Lake, daylighting the stream, and diversion opportunities before the water gets down to the basin in the run. At any rate, I definitely look forward to that in the hopefully somewhat near future. Do you know where we are with with sort of the test, the analysis that's going on? Yeah.
So unfortunately, right as we started the monitoring, we had an unseasonably dry season. I mean, we haven't had storm events. So, our team didn't feel comfortable drawing any conclusions that the M29 flapgate was working. So we are extending that monitoring period into next year to get a more representative, hopefully a few hard rainfalls to give us some usable data.
Okay.
So that's included in your update that's headed to your inbox there, but that is the plan, is to extend that monitoring. Certainly understand it's difficult to have a meeting without something to talk about, but certainly want to reinforce we haven't stopped those efforts, so we're continuing them.
Right. Okay. And then our conversations ongoing with the Army Corps and DEP, I know.
Yes, they are ongoing. Yeah.
Okay.
We're hopeful.
Yeah. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask about, and I asked about it last year as well, again, is the issue of evictions due to unpaid water bills. So, it is something that comes up. I've asked our folks at Lawyer for a Day to if we could get some more concrete numbers around that, about how often that's actually happening. So there's sort of two things. One is that when the water bill, so PWS or Pittsburgh Water is unique in that the water bill is attached to the property
owner, correct.
Right, to the property owner and the property. But the result is that, so if you don't pay your gas bill or you don't pay your light bill, right, that's in the renter's name. Maybe that follows you, but and there's also programs available for lower income folks, right, similar to PWSA's program. But the issue, I think, is twofold. One is evictions due to water bills, right? And also that landlord, because of that setup, landlords often take on the water bill. They just pay water, right? But the landlord's then paying that high. And now that we're seeing like these really significant, right? And then just sort of charging it to but it's not transparent, and the tenant is not getting that discount, right? If anything, like that's getting sort of added on elsewhere. Is that something that your team has discussed?
At length, and we have heard even during public comment at our board meetings the flip side of that from landlords who feel we're being too lenient on their tenants.
Well, right, that's the thing. And of
Right,
course,
so-
landlords are like, just shut it off, but that's not, it's water, right? Like, you don't want to shut off the water, but that's, I think, where landlords find themselves in a bind, right? So a tenant's actually paying rent, but then a landlord ends up filing an eviction because of the water bill, which is something we don't, we're doing everything we can to minimize evictions and make sure people stay in their homes and whatnot. So is there work being done at PWSA to figure out how to solve that problem?
The best way, and it doesn't work necessarily in every rental property scenario, but even tenants do have the ability to enroll directly with us. They do need to coordinate that with their property owner, but they can have that direct billing relationship with us, which will essentially remove that third party and also will allow them, if they're eligible, to get into the bill discount program, the one-time assistance programs, and then we will not shut off water service if there's a medical reason, if there's a restraining order. I know that's not the right term for it, but along those lines. So there's a number of, in addition to our notice periods and payment plans, that if they're availing themselves of all of that directly with us, it is very unlikely that they will achieve a shutoff if they're communicating with us. So we have been trying to promote that relationship that didn't exist a couple years ago, that it was all driven through the landlord.
Right, but the issue is that, and that's great, and I definitely appreciate all those programs, but the issue is that if the tenant is behind on the bill, right, the landlord is then evicting the tenant because of the bill, because at the end of the day, it's the landlord who's, like, so if the tenant leaves, the landlord's still stuck with the bill.
Correct.
And that's why the landlord is evicting the tenant over the water bill. You see what I mean? Whereas
I do.
if the bill just went with the tenant, like it does with the other utilities, if it just went with the tenant, I'm not saying that that's good or bad for the tenant, but I'm saying they would then not be like having this other issue of their landlord trying to evict them over the bill. The bill would be for them to deal with, right, eventually or however, but.
I will catch up with the team to see what the sort of the next evolution of the tenant bill pay process is. I certainly recognize the concern. As I mentioned, we hear the other side of it at times. I think, our approach is shut off as an absolute last resort.
Right, as it
but
should be.
Yeah,
I
I
commend
think
you for that, yeah.
if we can, I think it would be helpful to have a discussion with the advocate organization you referenced, and if there are some specific cases we can talk through to determine if there was something we could do differently. While the other private utilities, generally the bill follows the customer, I just will point out most municipal utilities, like a water authority in the Commonwealth, have the same arrangement we do, where it is the property owner, and that's often because that allows us to be able to use a lien for unpaid water bills, and losing that ability would essentially require us to eat a lot more bad debt than we currently do. So there's a financial implication to letting go of that. Right. But it's certainly worth a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, if there was, again, like I don't know what the answer is. I understand that part of it. So, but just when I don't know if there's a way for to connect with landlords, or I don't know, but I think it's I don't know what the solution is, but it does seem to me that that's something that we want to avoid, and unfortunately I wish I could say to all the landlords, we'll call PWSA and work, but I think that that's maybe where the problem is happening, is that the landlord calls PWSA and is like, like this bill, like what can I do? Shut it off, whatever it is that they're saying, right? They're worried about this like mounting water bill that they think they're going to be responsible for. and then they're left with no recourse from their perspective, right? Other than to like begin the eviction process. So if there's a way for PWSA to intervene in that, or I don't know, work with our lawyer for the day folks to talk about how, because that's not, we don't want to see that happening to people. We'd rather they just figure out a way to get their water, but it's hard, especially between the tenant and the landlord. It's often, at that point, it's sort of an antagonistic situation, you know what I mean? And maybe there's some way that group with their mediation services or whatever could come in and loop in PWSA, but I think it's a conversation that should happen.
Sure, we're happy to have that. And our thinking may be more involved than what I'm presenting today. There's certainly folks on our team that are much more well-versed in exactly how that's playing out.
Yeah,
in
so
people's
like
lives.
neighborhood legal services or whatnot, right? To sit down and sort of think through a way to kind of mitigate. I'm not saying it's happening it's not like all the time, but it's definitely something that happens. So, yeah. I think that's it for me. Yeah, thanks.
Councilwoman Strasburger. Thank you, Councilwoman Ward.
Thank you. No, I just was thinking about that, and it's sort of a related topic, but maybe from a slightly different angle. I was speaking to someone who happens to have like 2 rental properties that they maintain and rent out. Not their sole business, just something that they do, and they had no idea about any utility customer assistance programs. And from their position, they were really interested. I was able to connect them with Julie Meckling and explain to them how they would have to go through the process of, being on the name of the bill or, adding the tenant, which is a process, but then the tenant can potentially take advantage of any of the customer assistance programs. Their motivation is they get to keep their great tenant in if there's any kind of question as to whether affordability is an issue. And I don't know enough to know whether, like, how many rental property owners out there are the same as this particular person in their motivation. But, getting ahead of it too, to like connect with those who, finding the entity that has the best connection to as many rental property owners as possible to like inform them of it in the way that you'd want to inform tenants themselves, so that the proactive ones can take advantage of it and maybe find those folks who are a little bit tougher to identify as being eligible for any of these programs. Just a thought. I don't know who exactly that would be, but so again, approaching it from a different angle, but maybe getting ahead of it a little bit with so to keep people in their homes and to keep people in the places and to keep the property owners, with tenants and the stability of tenants and not having to find a new one. So whoever that might be, whether it is even PLI, whether it is a nonprofit organization who would have that kind of list out there.
Yeah. And the rental registry was something that for years has been, once we have that, then we're going to know.
Rental registration will be helpful.
It probably hit a nerve even mentioning it. But I do think there are probably some creative ways where we can try to find wherever these, both the, there's the formal groups that are more likely to manage apartment buildings and things. They're not the audience, I don't think, that we're talking about. These are probably single-family homes owned by an individual like you're referencing, that we try to find those touch points to let them know what is available to their tenants. So we'll definitely give it some thought. And like I said, there are people much smarter than I am probably already thinking about this that might have a better answer for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I don't have too many questions, but a couple questions came to mind that I think are more high level than not specifically around the operations of Pittsburgh Water. But as we were talking about green infrastructure, following the line of questioning from Councilwoman Warwick, in a previous life, I spent a lot of time when I worked with the Blue Green Alliance on green infrastructure stuff. And my first is just total curiosity question. From your perspective, we were talking about specifically around the question that Councilwoman Warwick, asked around PennDOT, and all the impervious pavement, that's within, your jurisdiction. But it made me think about, has the technology around pervious pavement evolved? I really haven't worked in the sustainability space since about, I guess that would have been about 2018. And I know at that time, pervious pavement was okay for parking lots, but it hadn't evolved to the point where it was ready for roadway use. In the last 7 years, has that technology evolved to the point where pervious pavement is ready for roadways?
I'm sure the technology has evolved. We have some projects actually in Councilwoman Strasburger's district that have utilized various elements of impervious surfaces, some in the parking lane and some on sidewalks. The challenge really becomes maintaining it because most of these systems are designed where they need to be cleaned or vacuumed, and that requires special, maintenance crews with specialized equipment. And I think that's been the big challenge in a broad scale implementation. There's a lot of, promise, and you could get really great results if all of Grant Street was, made of that material, for instance, but it does become a maintenance challenge long term.
And just along those lines, thinking about the Alcosan consent decree, and obviously, you don't represent Alcosan, but I would just be interested to know from a cooperation standpoint, what do you see, Pittsburgh Water's role in working with Alcosan around, stormwater management and the federal consent decree? Like, how does that interplay work?
So the most specific way that we will interact is in their consent decree. They call it, I believe, their clean water plan. They are required to at least engage in conversations with the 83 municipalities on taking over ownership of multiple municipal sewers. So in Pittsburgh, we have quite a bit of mileage of sewers that are carrying flow from municipalities outside of the city. And Alcosan is required to at least talk to us about taking over ownership and maintenance responsibilities for that. And it is, this infrastructure, unsurprisingly, is old, like everything else. Large diameter sewers can present risks as they eclipse their useful life in terms of sinkholes and things like that. So we are certainly interested in conveying that infrastructure to them because it is, in essence, a regional sewer and they're a regional authority, and that makes sense. So we are talking to them now about what that transfer looks like. The details are, how much do we pay them potentially for it, or do we need to improve it before we turn it over to them? Those are some of the nuts and bolts of that agreement, but we're having really productive discussions with them. So that is the most concrete touch point. However, as we're approaching, I mentioned, our own consent decree and combined sewer overflows, we want to make sure our customers are 40% of Alcosan's revenue base. The city is a 40% shareholder in Alcosan, right? So we're paying for the clean water plan. We want to make sure that the federal government and others aren't asking us to do the same things that they've asked Alcosan to do. And that's why we think there's an opportunity for us to focus on the areas we're responsible for, but then also encompass issues that maybe weren't being addressed in Alcosan's plan as it relates to overland flooding and sewer backups, things that are sort of these neighborhood level nuisances that we can enhance what they're doing. So we don't want to duplicate the work, but we think around the periphery within the city, there's things we can do to improve.
Mm-hmm. And in the spirit of cooperation, I know one thing that we sometimes hear about, from residents is, the unfortunate incident and when, maybe the city will pave a street and then, 6 months later, one of the utilities, the gas company or, Pittsburgh Water, but I think it's in more recent cases, it's been the gas companies then tear up the street again. What kind of coordination ongoing happens between DOMI? And I know you can't speak for the gas utilities, but from a Pittsburgh Water perspective, because I think, the example when I first, came on council, there was a project that Councilwoman Strasburger started in Point Breeze, which I inherited due to the redistricting, and I think it was a great example of how we coordinated the gas utility, Pittsburgh Water and Domi, so that the street didn't get tore up 3 times, and actually were able to provide savings due to, I think it was the gas utility was the one who came in last and actually provided funding to pave the street as well. What kind of coordination happens that you could speak to? I know you, like, again, you can't speak for the gas utilities, but from a Pittsburgh Water perspective, of working with Domi to ensure, or even maybe to change the timeline to see, like, okay, well, Domi's planning on paving the street a year from now. We'll hold off on that, or maybe Domi moves up their timeline to work together so that a street doesn't get like torn up 3 times in a 3.5 year period.
Right. No, and completely agree with the frustration. And, as someone who's lived on a street that has been torn up multiple times, it is painful to see. And I think we, at all the utilities, can do better. I think as it stands now, we share all of our planned construction projects with our, tentative schedules on an annual basis with Domi. Where it can become challenging for us is we're often also chasing leaks that are unexpected. We do find after paving that, in all likelihood, due to the vibration and weight placed on some of these older water mains, you pave the street and it can cause a leak. So, some of those things without a crystal ball, you can't necessarily predict and put us in that position where it looks like we don't know what we're doing, right? But in terms of the planned projects, not only through the permitting process that we need anytime we open a street, we share that information with Domi, but then we also share our GIS layer of here's where we're expected to be and when, so that we can avoid those instances as much as possible. We have a relationship with some utilities. I think some are more reluctant to share than others, because there can be kind of gamesmanship, right? Like if I show you where I'm going to be, then maybe I'm going to try to take advantage of your investment in paving in this area and take my money elsewhere, right? So I think we do need to do better to have a trust. Domi, is, I think, the right home for sharing that utility coordination and making sure that we do everything we can to even, I think in your experience in your district, the project lasted longer. But as you allude to, we're not going to be there for hopefully another decade plus because we took the time to coordinate and do it right once. So we're having the conversations, but I definitely think we could do more.
And this is another kind of just big picture question out of curiosity. Because again, like I mentioned, for a period of time, I worked a lot in green infrastructure, and one of the trips that we took, we traveled to Cleveland and I met with some of the building trades up there, and they were kind of showing what the infrastructure has looked like over the years as American cities had developed, and this one picture of a wooden utility line from the late 1800s stuck out. How old is the oldest infrastructure that's under our feet? How far as far as that's currently still in use, that obviously would be something that we would be concerned about, and also like what is the typical kind of life expectancy of the infrastructure that's under us right now?
So we certainly have components of infrastructure that came online in the late 1800s. And I, referenced the clear well at the water treatment plant, which is, arguably one of the most important pieces of infrastructure we have for clean drinking water is of that vintage. And on average, our water and sewer mains are about 80-ish years old. Our design standards today, we would expect if we put in a new water main, we would get 50 years of life. So that's why we say a lot, most of these assets are beyond their useful life. What is interesting, though, is we often will find pipe installed mid-century, 1950s, is failing more frequently than some of the pipe that was installed in the early 1900s. So some of it has to do with the materials themselves. Some of it has to do with the practices that were used. So as we advance in trying to predict where the next break can be and where we should invest, we have learned that you can't necessarily rely just on age. Everything is old, so that's a sort of a baseline assumption as we prioritize our work. we also can look at the material type and installation date, and there's some useful data to try to predict. Some is just more prone to failure than others.
And what are some of the best practices that cities, obviously more so east of the Mississippi, are doing that don't have the advantages of Seattle and, and Austin and Phoenix, cities that have kind of, are 50 to 75 years old, and weren't, founded in the 1700s and the 1800s. What are those best practices? Because there is a competitive, disadvantage that we have east of the Mississippi. Just obviously there's other just cultural advantages and other history and things that you just can't replicate in Las Vegas and places like that. But obviously they clearly have advantages because they're so new and they have the newer materials and the newer technology. But what are the older eastern cities doing? Because of just the challenges of having, aging, infrastructure, in some cases over 100, sometimes even older than a century old.
Yeah, it is a great question, and I am often envious of the Western and Southwestern utilities that, their definition of old certainly doesn't touch ours, right? I think what we collectively have to do as, cities that own older systems is, and it's something we haven't quite figured out yet, but as I alluded to, finding the right metrics to be really strategic in where we invest. So trying to find, a way to predict likelihood of failure. You're never going to know exactly when, but you can find trends as you pool data and you have a really accurate asset inventory that you may be able to focus on an area. Okay, we know that these pipes are, on a score of 1 to 10, an 8 in terms of likelihood of failure. That's where we should invest our dollars. We all have the same challenges: limited amount of resources, a lot of old infrastructure. So I think it's the evolution that we need to embrace is just being more innovative in how we apply those dollars, knowing that we're never going to get to replacing 10% a year or anything like that. We're generally between 1 to 3% replacement of our water mains per year. So we're in good company. No one's quite figured it out per se, but some cities that we're talking to have just a much more robust data-driven process for determining where they do the work.
I'm going to ask one more question. I want to give Councilperson Charlotte an opportunity as well. So, and what authorities are those? What cities are you looking at that are providing some examples or best practices, and that even us as policymakers should be looking at as well?
DC Water has been really innovative in their use of technologies. I was there over a decade ago, and they were working through some of these predictability metrics, and so I know a lot of that has evolved since. Now to contradict myself, a lot of the Western utilities, because water is so scarce, they're also very on top of their maintenance and replace, they're going after every drop of water loss because they don't have enough water and they're growing. So some of those cities also are doing some really interesting things. Tucson Water is a really innovative utility in the Southwest. We talked at Hampton Roads quite a bit. They're also a leader in the way that they manage their system. And I'm really lucky. I sit on the board of directors of a trade association, in essence, of just other municipal publicly owned utilities. And we've got New York at the table. We've got, Cleveland, Cincinnati, all of them that I'm able to sort of bounce these ideas off of. And we'd be happy to share some of those discussions with you.
Absolutely. I'll be very interested in hearing those conversations. I want to give an opportunity to Councilman Charlin to provide any comments or any questions.
I did already go. So
you did. You did. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
all these meetings are running together, but
no, I can.
It's a great opportunity for a second round.
I can go about the stuff
if anyone's so
more,
inclined.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I apologize. I've been here since 10 a.m. So it's all running together. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments, Councilwoman Charlotte?
I did.
Warwick.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry. It shows you how long I've been at the table. Right.
I did, so in the rate settlement document, I forgot to mention that there was also a point about the management of damaged customer-owned laterals, and that Pittsburgh Water, now is that when it says that, is that talking about private sewer lines?
Yes, since laterals, by definition, we don't own any of them. So this is the conversation we had last week of trying to find a way to provide support for customers who can't make those repairs.
Okay.
So we're restarting those.
So that'll be, okay, so those
discussions.
conversations, I don't have anybody in particular, I just know that it's an issue for a certain part of my, so, I mean, it's Regent Square in particular, but, yeah, so whatever comes out of that plan, if, I want to be included as well, just so I can let residents know whatever that outreach is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, thank you for your time, and also to echo some of the comments that were made earlier, definitely special shout out to Rachel Rampa and Rebecca Zito for all their work and their always quick responses to ongoing constituent issues and calls that we get in the community, and your quick response. And also want to thank you for your partnership and being so open and willing, particularly when we're dealing with the situation at the Homewood House, when you're dealing with a situation of a bad out of town landlord who's not paying their bills, and you have over 100 residents who could have potentially lost their water, and you understanding that situation and making sure that bad actors in New Jersey don't hurt the lives of folks here in the city. So thank you again. Looking forward to sitting down with you in the near future, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and enjoy the time, well-deserved time spent with family.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
And now I'd like to invite the team from the Pittsburgh Land Bank to join us at the table. And while they're joining us, I ask our Budget Director, Peter McDevitt, to give a brief overview of the department.
Thank you, Councilman. The mission of the Pittsburgh Land Bank is to return unproductive real property to beneficial reuse through an equitable, transparent, and public process, revitalize neighborhoods to strengthen the city's tax base, and support socially and economically diverse communities. The Pittsburgh Land Bank is governed by a 9-member board of directors, 3 of whom are appointed by City Council, representing the districts with the most distressed and vacant parcels. Councilman Wilson is on the board, Council President Lavelle is the vice chair, and Councilman Mosley is the board secretary. That is all I have.
Thank you, Director McDevitt, and I just want to state for the record that we are still joined by Councilwoman Warwick, got it right this time, Councilman Charlin, Councilwoman Strasburger, and I do want to give a shout out to the District 9 staff, Latia Brock, in particular, for bringing snacks for the members who've been sitting here for several hours now. So welcome to the Pittsburgh Land Bank, and please introduce yourselves, and when you're ready, give your presentation.
Good afternoon. This is Sally Stadelman, the acting director of the Pittsburgh Land Bank.
Hello, Joshua Roland, the real estate transactions coordinator for the Pittsburgh Land Bank.
And council member, I think we need a moment to get our PowerPoint set up. Is that, yes? Yeah. Can I pull that up on my own? Yeah. I also have a couple of printed copies of this if anybody wants.
Thank you.
If that's helpful. Well,
just pass
maybe,
it out.
Yeah. And Josh just emailed this out as well. So give me just one moment here to get this up and presented. Because you don't have a copy of it. Like this, I can project this from my own laptop, right?
Have the Zoom link, so you just need to log into that.
That's right. Okay. Sorry. I don't know if we should have taken a 5-minute break to get us set up, if that's... do we have any members online? Oh.
We have no members online. For the public, we're just getting the PowerPoint set up, so if you're at home, watching this riveting action.
Maybe we should just have you present it, then, or have you...
This might be a good time to grab a water.
So you're going to get on the link. Yeah, and then I'll just walk through this. Let's see here.
But feel free to take your time, Director.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Yes. Oh, yes, I will be sure to adjust as soon as I get settled here. I think I can do it. If you're gonna project, I think I might be okay. And I'll just rely on my paper copy here. Put this over here.
Okay.
All right. Oh, great. Okay. Does that look good? We ready to begin? Okay. All right. Okay. Good afternoon. As I said, I'm Sally Stadelman with the Pittsburgh Land Bank. We are here to give our 2026 capital budget presentation. And before I launch into what we've been up to this year and our 2026 projections, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the why of why it is that the city of Pittsburgh is in need of a land bank. So you can see here, this is a city-maintained dashboard that projects the amount of tax delinquency in the city of Pittsburgh. We have over 11,000 properties in the city of Pittsburgh that are tax delinquent. The total amount of lost taxes that have gone unpaid for properties that have not paid taxes, in some cases for more than 15 or 20 years, is over $54 million. By our calculations, looking at the available data, we estimate that there are around 1,000 structures in the city that would require land bank intervention. That means that they are, indicators show that they are abandoned, and they will likely remain abandoned and tax delinquent without a intervention to begin a tax foreclosure process. That almost guarantees that those properties will have to be torn down with taxpayer-funded demolition. We can go to the next. And as we can see from our own 2019 neighborhood needs assessment, the failure to address this vacant and abandoned property that allows property conditions to continue to deteriorate also causes displacement. So there's a growing amount of literature that suggests resolution to this problem and is a guiding principle of the Pittsburgh Land Bank, and that is the concept of middle neighborhoods and how you maintain them. This is not the missing middle, but rather the policy idea that we have neighborhoods that are where middle class and working class families live, and they are neither rapidly improving or declining, and they simply need maintenance in order to maintain the existing inventory, maintain naturally occurring affordable housing. And so our goal at the Land Bank is to help create and stabilize, preserve, and maintain middle neighborhoods. And we hope to highlight how we have been up to just that over the last year. And finally, to emphasize, no resident should be able to afford to live in the neighborhood they live in because it is full of blighted, vacant, and abandoned property. No resident deserves to live next to a blighted, vacant, and abandoned property and the problems that they bring. All right, so that takes us into a 2025 overview of our year. So first, I'd like to start by highlighting our recent accomplishment, and that is the signing of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement between the City of Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh School District, Allegheny County, and the Pittsburgh Land Bank. This is a momentous agreement that finally grants the Pittsburgh Land Bank access to the sheriff's sale. The PA Land Bank Act that was passed in 2012 requires agreement to be in place for the land bank to use the sheriff's sale and to access our priority bid. This means that we will now have a process that will allow us to acquire tax delinquent, vacant, and abandoned property in about 9 months, and hopefully those will be arriving in our inventory with clear title, which also shaves off an additional 4 months to being able to turn that property over to its new owner. This agreement also solidifies our 50% tax remittance. So the land bank collects 50% of generated taxes on any property that we sell the 5 years after the property is sold. It outlines a process for the land bank to request property be placed in the share of sale and to confirm that the taxes will be waived. And it also appoints, it also creates a seat on the board for a school district member and a representative from Allegheny County. Next, just wanted to highlight we're projecting this year that we will have sold 84 properties, which I think is something like a 400% increase from last year, which will bring the total number of sales completed by the Pittsburgh Land Bank to 104. This year, we're projecting to sell about 10 structures and 74 vacant lots. So I'd keep that number in mind because you'll see that we're expecting that percentage to switch in the coming year. And we just have displayed our list of buyers up on the screen. I know we're too small for me to read from here. And so those sales we are projecting that we will come very close to hitting about $460,000 in revenue from those 84 sales. And big thank you to Joshua Rolone, who joined our team earlier this year and has been critical in moving those property sales along. So to highlight a few of the sales types that we've completed here, we've sold 34, by the end of the year, we will have sold 34 vacant parcels to affordable new construction projects. So you can see from our buyers here, the majority of our buyers are BIPOC-led organizations located in majority Black neighborhoods. A lot of these projects would not have been possible without funding from the Federal Home Loan Bank and the Urban Redevelopment Authority's for sale housing program. So we were happy to help participate and move the land along. We've made sales directly to small business owners. We've sold 7 different parcels, creating green space, outdoor space for cafe seating. And finally, we've sold 12 parcels this year to help preserve green space. One of our biggest buyers this year was the Allegheny Land Trust. We have sold them property to forever protect Hillcrest Urban Farm in Garfield, the Kincaid Street Community Garden in Garfield as well, and Ye Olde Allegheny Community Garden in the Mexican War Streets. Just a quick overview here of what's currently in our inventory. We own 45 structures, 34 vacant lots, and we have about 43 properties that are actively on their way into the land bank inventory from the City of Pittsburgh's 3 taxing body inventory. And just a couple of fun pie charts for members here of a breakdown of where our property that we own is currently located within the city, with District 6 leading the way. No, you're fine. And then I think we can go to the next. And a breakdown of properties that we've sold this year and their locations. 2 pending sales that I think will increase the total share for District 6 and 9 are our Charles Street area sales, as well as some sales to the Urban Academy in Larmer. So one program that I wanted to highlight here today that we've really been able to establish this year in 2025 is what we're calling our pilot residential rehab program. So this is where the Pittsburgh Land Bank reviews existing structures, largely single-family homes. And then we process them and prepare them for sale. We list them on the market through a licensed real estate agent, so they're available on websites like Zillow and Realtor.com. And we both complete stabilization work and clear the title before the properties are listed for sale. And so potential buyers can own these homes in as little as 2 months. We simply require that our potential buyers, they must submit a full rehab plan and show proof of funding that they can cover the cost of both the rehab plan and the cost to acquire the property. We list our properties for sale for the first 90 days. They're listed for owner occupants only, and then after that we'll take applications from any type of buyer. And again, have to meet those same kinds of those same requirements. They've got to have the proof of funds and a full rehab budget and pass our qualified buyer check. And why this program is so critical is it really helps mitigate the land bank's risk of acquiring property, especially when they start out as property that is intended to go into affordable housing sales. So we acquire property for a nonprofit, something falls through with the grant, the required amount of work might be much higher than initially anticipated. Now we have a way to still quickly return this property to the private market and move on to the rest of the pipeline, especially with our access to the sheriff's sale now. Because there is nothing worse than allowing these homes to sit. With every passing month and year, they only incur more damage from being exposed to the freeze and thaw cycles. Once you develop a hole in the roof, that can cause incredible damage throughout the structure of the property. So it is of utmost importance that we're able to simply move structures along efficiently into a responsible pipeline so we can continue to access and turn over more property. So just a little breakdown of how we currently evaluate structures and mitigate risk is the first thing that we do when we're looking at a neighborhood is we're looking at the comparable area sales. So what is the value of this house going to be once it's fully renovated? And that number is really important because that's going to be the loan amount that you're going to be able to access. And so what we don't want to do is acquire a house that needs so much work that after renovation value is higher than what the appraised value of the home is going to be. That probably means that house is going to need to be torn down. So we do that review first. We also look at what properties are selling in that neighborhood for as-is condition, so we can calculate whether or not we're going to break even or plan to lose some funding on a sale. So this property we're looking at here, which is under contract on High Street, so you can see that our estimated total rehab cost is $120,000, which comes in much lower than the estimated post-renovation value, right? So that's a good green light there. And in order to clean this house out, put a new door on it, actually didn't have a door at all when we acquired it, put a new door on it so it's safe for buyers to walk through. We've invested about $15,000, and it's now under contract for $19,000. What's also really important with this program is that we're targeting whole streets at a time. So we listed and we've sold one and are under contract for another 2 on High Street. So overall, it's a slight net gain, although we did lose some money on one of the sales. It kind of all evens out, and it's critical that these properties are moving together because it makes it much more likely we can sell them when people see that there's movement and stabilization occurring on the street. And so for the land bank, our average subsidy required to process a property like this, it's averaging about $25,000. And so that's a balance of some of these cheaper properties. Some we put new roofs on and require a little more stabilization work. And that is compared to another sale that we love to make, which is our subsidized affordable homeownership properties. So those properties require a minimum of $150,000 of public subsidy in order to have that property fully rehabbed and sold as a turnkey property. And so we really need both of those programs operating together because what we see, and I'll highlight in a couple of pictures we have here, is that when we leave dilapidated properties on the street, when we do rehab those affordable homes, it's much harder to sell them. So we need a way to make sure all the properties are moving. We're helping to stabilize whole streets at a time. It's really what makes this program, makes the land bank most effective. So just want to highlight a few before and after pictures of the properties that we have been working on and will be listing very, very soon. We have a couple here of 2316 Perrysville Avenue, and my most favorite before and after coming up here. So here's our before and our after, just with a new coat of paint. Got rid of that falling apart porch there. This house is now cleaned out. And the land bank owns the property next to this one as well, which I think is really critical, that both are going to move together. I don't think it would be possible to sell one without the other. So we keep going here. Also really excited to preserve the slate roof on that one. Took a little extra work, but something we want to prioritize at the land bank. This is 115 Hawkins Street, also located in Perry Hilltop. There are 2 other properties on this street currently being rehabbed by the City of Bridges Community Land Trust. Again, really critical that we don't leave a house like this sitting next to our affordable properties that we have invested in. I think it took about 3 years from when this property was first identified to get it to the land bank and get that front porch ripped off, and it was just this like slow motion train wreck of watching the porch fall. And so it was the first thing that the crew did, was rip that porch down. And so we're in the process of finalizing the permit so we can rebuild that porch and get this listed for a potential home buyer, homeowner. We've got a before and after of 435 East Burgess, also going to be listed for sale soon in the neighborhood of Fineview. This is one of our, this property has since been sold, but 3319 Niagara Street in Oakland, just an example of, the amount of, just the ability to remove the items within the property, make it so much easier for people to understand, and set a correct budget so they can be successful in their rehabs. Really mitigates a lot of risk for the buyer. This is 211 Amherst Street in Elliott. A before and after. You can actually see that piece of floor missing there. So this would have been a perfectly salvageable floor, but because it had been exposed to years of freeze and thaw, it had actually pushed in on itself and there was a huge hump in the middle of the floor. So it'll now have to be replaced by the future buyer, something that could have been prevented had this been foreclosed on years prior. 1021 Rue Grandview, another example of not only did these structures need to be cleaned out on the inside, but often we're dealing with years of overgrowth. We actually had a porch collapse from removing the vines on the porch. So it is problematic that these sit without any kind of exterior maintenance as well. It's hard to see in this picture, but I also want to point out the enormous tree that we had to take down behind this home. Really large trees are another very serious problem that can cause property damage to the surrounding owners. They go to further destabilize that street and can threaten the status of homeowners insurance and surrounding property owners. So just lots of deferred maintenance that can really spread when they're not addressed. And finally, another clean-out picture from 911 Amherst, also soon to be listed for sale for potential owner-occupant buyers. So just a quick overview here. We've sold 2 properties so far through this program. We have another 3 under contract. We think we'll close before the end of the year. 2 currently listed on the market that we do have interested buyers. I'm hoping are going to make our December board meeting. We have another 14 properties that are just about ready to be listed, and another 5 on their way from the city's inventory to be placed in this program as well. I think we can see that full list on the next slide. Yeah, perfect. Yep, that's exactly the one. I also want to highlight this property coming in. So we have Perry Hilltop, Fineview, another property in Sheridan, Elliott, a property in Garfield. And the neighbors actually called us this week to say thank you for the completed cleanup. So we're excited to get that one listed at another property in Uptown. And also just want to highlight, so we list these for sale for potential owner occupants. I think and actually you can go to the next Josh, that vetting at the beginning is what is most critical. We want to make sure people are prepared to take on the level of rehab these properties require. But we also use either an enforcement mortgage or a reverter agreement that requires that the property must be fully rehabbed within 2 years, or there will be a penalty, or the land bank is actually able to take the property back if no progress has been made. So we have protection on the front and back end to make sure that these rehabs are successful. And finally, just wanted to give a little shout out. We are looking for licensed real estate agents to list these properties. So if you or anyone you know would be interested in listing property for the land bank, please check out our website, follow the QR code to fill out our form. And then finally, one other program I wanted to highlight in 2025 is our donation program. So this year, the land bank was able to receive 4 donated properties. And this program is really critical because we have hundreds of property owners in the city of Pittsburgh due to, there's many different reasons why this happens. Often people, a bank begins a foreclosure process, but never completes the foreclosure process. And then unbeknownst to the owner, the title transfer never happens. They've walked away from the property, and that property sits for years until they are finally informed, usually through appearance at a magisterial district court hearing from PLI violations. They learn that they still own the property. By that time, the property has deteriorated to the point and accumulated so much in back taxes, it's not possible for that person to sell the property, and they're totally stuck. They are stuck in a never-ending cycle of attending magisterial district court hearings, facing potential fines, and they're not able to escape this until this program has been created. So we'll only take properties where the back taxes are high enough that they are truly not able to resell to the market. And so of those 4 properties we've acquired, we've actually got 2 that are already in an affordable housing grant pipeline, and those are in District 3. We've got 1 in District 6. It might be 1. It's right on the border. 1, or it might have been in 1, and now it's in 6. And where is District 2. We've been able to, and they've all come from referrals from the magisterial district courts. And I'm just so thrilled that we've been able to get this online, because I was exposed to this problem when I worked at PLI in 2018 and 19, and it's absolutely tragic when there isn't a path forward for both the property owner or the structure. So the other 2 will be cleaned out, and those will also be listed through pilot residential rehab. All right, a quick overview of our 2026 projections. Just a breakdown of our projected revenue for 2026. So you can see we have our final ARPA allocation we're expecting to receive in Q1 of 2026 . The only thing I want to point out here is that our projected property sales, we likely won't see the majority of that until the end of 2026, and that would include the tax remittance as well. That wouldn't be something we'd receive until towards the end of the year. So we have a healthy budget to continue the work that we have been doing to kind of maintain the level that we've achieved this year in 2025. But what's really critical for us is the land bank has to be able to project out years in advance. I need to be able to start requesting property through the sheriff's sale in the first half of 2026 to then have an inventory in 2027. So if we don't know whether or not there will be funding available, we won't be able to begin that critical work, and that will put us 6 months to a year behind in acquiring and stabilizing tax delinquent property, in accessing that property for mixed-use development. So that is a critical task that we are facing in this coming year to understand. And finally, I just wanted to highlight our We have been working with the Hilltop Alliance, and we have identified 22 vacant tax delinquent structures. 11 are in District 3 and 11 are in District 4. We are applying for an LSA grant so that once the land bank acquires these, we'll be able to immediately stabilize the properties. So we're stopping that active deterioration that's increasing the cost to rehab them. We've applied for funding to do some native landscaping, decorative board ups, and so that there's an immediate relief for neighbors that have been living next to these blighted, vacant, and abandoned properties. And then that will allow those properties to sit while the Hilltop Alliance continues to fundraise so that they can be rehabbed and resold to affordable homeowners. And we're certainly going to hope that they are successful with all 22. But again, with our pilot residential rehab program, we do have the option to then switch over and sell any properties that we may need to move in the meantime. So we're really excited to finally be getting into District 4 and doing some work. All right, and that takes us to the end of our presentation. I think we want to stay on this.
Well, thank you, Director Stadelman, for another detailed presentation. And I just want to note, for the record, if anyone has just joined us, we are joined by Councilwoman Warwick, Councilman Charlin, Councilwoman Strasburger, and we also have Council President Lavelle online as well. And we can begin with questions and comments from Councilwoman Strasburger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having sat on the Land Bank Financial Task Force, I don't have too many questions, so I'll turn it over to the others pretty quickly. I guess I don't, maybe this is a preview for when that all, wraps up and we have a bigger, broader discussion about future financial plans for the land bank. But do you feel as if you have a model or a program that is easily scalable, so that should we identify either a new funding stream or an existing funding stream that we just hadn't tapped into before, state level, whatever it might look like, do you feel like there's something you have a program that's pretty easily scalable, and do you want to just sort of speak about that a bit?
Yes, I think the short answer is yes, that this is absolutely scalable. It's going to depend on a little bit if that breakdown is with structures or vacant land. Obviously, vacant land is going to be easier to process because we don't have to do that individual evaluation of what is going on with the structure and plan that out. But the challenge with vacant land is it's typically more expensive to build than it is to rehab. Again, depending on the structure, but on average. So finding that funding source that would allow us to then process a larger number of lots is what's really critical. So, so we're absolutely, we would be poised and ready to be able to expand. At some point, we have to start adding staff on depending on that size and scale, and then it would largely be dependent on, where is the funding source coming from to complete that project at a larger scale.
Great. That's really all I wanted to ask for now. I should have started with this. Absolutely phenomenal work. It's not just, especially getting, all the agreements in place. It's not just a land bank. You are innovating, you're trying new things, the rehab program, the donation program, it's like multi-solvers is what I like to call them. Like, you're solving multiple problems all at once for multiple types of people and for multiple entities. So I just can't, I might not have the largest, the most representative district in terms of like land bank properties. That doesn't mean that and that also doesn't mean that my constituents don't care about the importance of acquiring, remediating, and getting back on the tax rolls for affordable housing or for higher use, these properties. We all care about it. We all should care about it, no matter where you live in the city. So great work. Whatever support you need, please count on me for that support. And I appreciate all the work that you and your team do.
Thank you, Council Member.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Charles, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you for being here. Thanks for all the work we've done together over the last year. I'm very excited about the 22 properties that you're moving with the Hilltop Alliance. I don't think I realized that 11 of those were in Councilman Coggle's district. I'm a little less supportive now.
I know. Honestly, I don't.
You should have just kept that yourself. But I'm really
We
happy.
had to double check those.
11 properties in Knoxville, and it looks like the Arlington slopes border there. So that can make a huge difference there. And that really is the only way the property is moving in Knoxville right now. That is kind of our the problem that we have in a neighborhood like Knoxville, where property values just are not nearly enough to make anything move through the system. So you're kind of the only show in town, you and the Hilltop Alliance. I'm glad that partnership is working out, because it is, for the southern side of my district, it is the most important thing. It is the number one thing we hear about is vacant lots. But it's also, I think, really important to note when we go through what our affordable housing needs are, it's generally a number in the same scale as our vacant properties that are within the city. It's if we could find a magic wand and fix all those properties up, we've solved our affordable housing need right there. So you're kind of, again, I think, as Councilperson Strasburger said, solving multiple problems at once there. I do want to ask, in addition to, obviously the answer is funding, but number two, if there's anything that we can do at council to support you, what would that be? I think I know getting this agreement signed was a huge deal for us, to let you be able to take that on. What else can we do to make you more efficient?
I mean, you're spot on with the funding request, of course. And I would say, if members are receiving calls from constituents that need help with, if they're living next to a blighted property, if they own a blighted property and they're looking for a solution, we're always happy to take referrals. And I think that helps us to triage a little bit, property that we are working on. So, so if there is anyone at all that's facing a problem, we always want to hear about it, so we can factor that in when we're looking at property that we need, that we would like to be acquiring.
Sure. Okay. Notification of a property. We can do that.
Yeah. I also think there's lots of opportunity for. I'm very excited in 2026 to continue and deepen our collaboration with departments like the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections, City Finance Real Estate Division, the Department of Public Works. I think there's a lot of synergy that can be achieved between all of us working together and continuing to kind of streamline our work and processes. So, for example, wouldn't it be nice if, once DPW does a clean and lien, a property is then in a pipeline to be acquired by the land bank, so we aren't looking at years of never-ending clean and liens, but we're taking advantage of that public investment that we've made to get a property cleaned up.
What would it take to make that pipeline happen?
I mean, I think part of it is staff capacity that we just. I mean, I guess I'll only speak for my own.
From the land bank or from Public Works?
I think maybe everyone might say,
yeah.
The more staff that are focused on this issue and have the time to collaborate in that way, the more of that work that we can do, the more that we can kind of take advantage of our overlap. So I can say that with 100% certainty on the land bank side. I'd hate to speak for another department and their capacity, but I think we could really maximize our impact for the funding that we spend in those what can feel very disjointed right now between condemnation, dead end properties, clean and liens, the city owned inventory. It's the 3 taxing body inventory. Lots of opportunity for increased collaboration, I think.
One kind of like uncharted group of buyers that we have in the city at our disposal are city employees. And our office did a treasurer sale kind of Q&A with the 4th Division and Public Works, because when we were out there on the clean and leans, people were like, how do I buy this land? How do I buy this land? And we're like, why don't we bring in the finance department and have them actually walk you through how to purchase land? And we're not able to give them any sort of like extra incentives or anything like that, but just at least making sure that they're aware of how to purchase the property. I think that would be something like really cool for the land bank to do, to go through like, hey, when you're cleaning that property, you could own it. And I think there's a lot of, there's kind of an untapped market there of folks that work for us that don't know how to access that. And so,
Councilmember Charland, I literally had this conversation with, we were cited by a DPW, one of the new DPW inspectors, for someone else's trash. And we were chatting on the phone, and I said exactly that to her, is if you or any of your colleagues would be interested in buying this property, and that's absolutely on my to-do list, to figure out how do we get this information out to our city employees, because I think that is exactly who would be willing to take on a big rehab project so they can have the house of their dreams in the city of Pittsburgh.
And we know they pass residency, they all the other things that we're concerned about. So I would love to, if there's any way that I can be helpful in that, I would love to. I think in our office we're kind of proud of being able to do that. But the other question, just kind of to Councilperson Strasburger's point, like if we were able to, and this is, a tough time for us to find city funds, but we were able to drop $10 million into your lap next year, can you spend that?
It depends on how quickly we can hire staff. And I mean, you have to think there's a 9-month delay. So I would say that $10 million over 3 years, absolutely. But that would allow us to then plan to, we could work to make sure that those 1,000 properties, and really we have 1,900 properties on our condemnation list. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a plan for all 1,900? If we knew that they were moving down one path or another? And so I think an investment like that could guarantee that we can absorb the risk of processing something that might ultimately be a demolition, and then removing any barriers that would allow us to then resell something back to the market, or mothball it so it can be part of an affordable housing project.
The other, the other thing you just mentioned there that I think is really important is your partnership with demolition. And I've, often talked about how important it is that the two are, when we've got a vacant property, they can really go through one of two paths. And at what point do we get something on a list and say, like, yes, we can use this for land bank, or no, this needs to be something we find for demolition. And really those two paths kind of work they're kind of our, brake and accelerator. And the only thing that I would love to see more with that, though, is the ability for that to be at least some level, maybe not publicly available, but like available to us in council. For a long period of time, we used to have the condemned property list online, and then there was like the what has been looked at for asbestos and lead, and then what's actually being torn down, kind of the same way that we used to do the paving list. We don't do that anymore, and I'm sure there's a reason why we don't do that. But I would like for us to get back to that point of like, hey, 133 Zara, is that property going to go for? Are we searching for funding for the land bank? Or are we searching for funding for demolition? What is the pathway forward? It would be great, at least for the council offices, for us to have kind of a list of what is on your radar and what has been evaluated.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And we also rely on being able to see that pipeline, because we don't want to process a property that's already in an active demolition pipeline. So yes, that would be a dream if we could have that work done and also have that publicly available as well. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you do in my district. Appreciate it, and thank you for your partnership and friendship. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Warwick, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for being here. Lots of good work this year. That property you listed for Farmer Girl Ebb, was that the one that was folks came and testified about?
It was not.
Oh.
We've sold her 2 properties this year, and one is it
1261 Chartiers.
1261
And then another
Chartiers
one on Fairdale.
and 1022
1022.
Fairdale. 1261? We're going to double check that address. It is a structure on Chartiers Avenue coming into Sheridan. It is actually the old Sammy's Pizza,
Old Sammy's Pizza.
which we've talked
Which I'm
about.
very familiar with.
1461 Chartiers.
1461 Chartiers. There we go. And so that structure, so she received URA grant funding, and they're going to turn that structure into a fresh food market. So we were able to help facilitate the sale. And then the other one is one half of the Sheridan Garden, the Sheridan Farm that she maintains there, and is almost exactly across the street from one of our pilot residential rehab properties we have under contract, 1017 Fairdale. It's kind of like a nice synergy on that corner. So those were the sales that we completed this year with Farmer Girl Ebb.
Okay, I was just kind of
Yeah.
curious what the status was on that one, because a lot of people came. At any rate, so right now there's 45 vacant structures in the inventory. And thanks for the end user accountability info. What is the timeline for for the buyer to complete a rehab?
2 years is
2
our
years.
is our average timeline, and I think maybe for a couple of these structures we're getting ready to list in Perry Hilltop, we have a 3,000 and 4,000 square foot house. So we'd probably make some exceptions for like large projects, but for the most part, it's 2 years to complete the rehab.
2 years, and if they aren't making progress, what happens?
So I would call the use of our reverter agreement is, of course, a nuclear option. You know, we don't want property back.
Right.
So it's simply there in case something goes catastrophically wrong and there's no progress made, or the house has gotten actively worse. And it's kind of just a way for us to stay in touch with the owner. But I think in general, what I'm foreseeing is we hope that we do enough vetting and work up front with the buyer, that they're set up for success. You know, they're not saying they have $60,000 in funds to do a $120,000 rehab. They just wouldn't pass our initial review. And so a lot of that should be prevented with that initial vetting process. But I think it just gives us an opportunity to then collaborate with the buyer if something doesn't work out, that there's some kind of responsible resolution, you know, that it's sold to another responsible owner, is the intention of the reverter agreement.
Okay.
So, which we talk about with people, everyone asks about it, and we certainly don't want to scare anyone away either.
Right.
Because it's not like, oh, you're 80% done 2 years in and we're coming back to it.
Right.
We would certainly not. That is not the intention of the reverter agreement.
Got it. Yeah, I like that idea of the clean and lanes, you know, I mean, that just feels like a list, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
a
We have the
quarterly list.
data, right? We've got the
So
data.
so
We
that's
know.
something, I mean, happy to talk with DPW about that. I mean, DPW doesn't have to do anything other than give you the list, and
Yeah.
then you can
That's it.
go to, right. So,
Yeah, we can go
yeah,
say, oh, what's
I definitely
going on?
like that idea. One thing that I have been wondering about, specifically for what I'll call sort of organically affordable neighborhoods, right? Like neighborhoods that are not going to gentrify just by nature of, you know, in my district specifically, Hazelwood below the tracks, right next to the, you know, the rail yard, where it's noisy and awful and whatever, and it's just not, that area is not going to gentrify, right?
Right.
So, you know, I understand that you work with a lot of nonprofits, but of course nonprofits need to raise the money to do the rehab, right? Because they are, you know, they're selling or whatever they're doing, but they are having to raise money to keep housing affordable. But I mean, well, I can't speak to, but certainly in my district, there are landlords who own, 30, 40, whatever houses, and they're probably not the nicest houses all the time, but they are just kind of naturally affordable. And these landlords, like, they're fast, like they have a small crew, they get a house, they rehab it, it's done. It's like so I'm wondering if there is openness to, I've often had conversation more in passing, but like, oh, I want to buy this one, but the city won't sell it to me. They say it's reserved for, this nonprofit or other, right? Is there an openness to working with landlords who just have fun? They don't need to raise any money, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's their business. That's what they do. But while also ensuring that they are not allowed to fall into disrepair once a tenant, you know what I mean? That they continue to be good landlords and they maintain the property if there's some kind of way to deed restrict, you know what I mean? That, like, where they could, in theory, risk losing the rehabilitated, like you say, we don't want properties back, but if you don't keep the property up, even if you have, and once a tenant is in there, that we could pull it back, like after a certain number of PLI violations or something like that.
Yes, I mean, 100%. I think the reality is, especially, I think what we're seeing when some of these houses we're selling, 1266 High Street comes to mind, is that that property is going to an investor. It's barely a one-bedroom house. And that's just, it's not a structure that an owner-occupant typically wants to buy, right? Our owner-occupants are usually looking for the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. So we're finding that anything with less than that number of bedrooms does seem to be a little bit more renter-investor friendly. And so, I think we're 100%, we are beginning to start to sell to some of those types of buyers. And I'd say that I would say yes to, I think we're open to looking at other ways that we can kind of individually hold our buyers accountable. But I also think if you kind of look at it from a 10,000-foot view, part of the problem with, we have existing systems that in theory should be holding those kinds of property owners accountable. But they're so overwhelmed by the number of vacant and abandoned property that they're then not able to really hone in on, like, I mean, imagine if PLI had the capacity to target, those large, when they get several violations, now they have the time to research and say, oh, this person owns 100 properties and we're not going to look at everything because we're getting all these red flags. You're not taking care of your property. Our system does not have that capacity right now. And largely it's because the number of the amount of time and effort it takes just to keep these 1,900 condemned properties, in citation mode. So I think that we could do some things on our end, but we could also reach a critical scale where our entire system that is responsible for monitoring the property violations could also just naturally have more capacity to take care of those kinds of problems. And I want to say rental registration, but I'm
sure.
It's
right.
It's,
I mean, that's the answer to it all, right? Is the rental registry and doing that work. But yeah, I mean that's interesting. I mean, because it's frustrating to walk, along Langhorne Street or some other, you know what I mean, below the tracks, and it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, all vacant. All more or less, boarded up, but like clearly it wouldn't take that much. I mean, you can just, there's small houses,
And
and to know that, like, I mean, I can think of four landlords off the top of my head that would happily take those properties and just, sort of do like a get or done job, but that they would be then affordable rentals.
Yeah.
But then also
absolutely.
keeping them accountable so they don't let them become.
And what I say to residents, a conversation I have all the time, because people like to hone in and blame the slum landlords. And what I say is that your real problem is that your vacant and abandoned property is setting a really low bar for property maintenance. And so your average resident that lives in a neighborhood with a lot of blight, it's very, I mean, myself included, right? It's very overwhelming to try and pinpoint, well, which property is actually vacant and abandoned, which one is occupied with the landlord. You know, it's like you almost have to like keep a spreadsheet and really be on top of how you utilize 311. And so what happens on average is residents report problem property, half of it is abandoned, and so nothing happens, and then they give up on the 311 system, and so those landlords are then allowed to they are not held accountable because a lot of residents, it's just so easy to get burned out trying to keep up with, using a system like 311 to keep property owners held accountable.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's other properties that are city-owned. I mean, I remember there's the one, I don't know if you remember it, we were at an opening of like a ribbon cutting on Flowers Avenue, and then literally, like, just up there was this, this property is, like, wretched, but it's city-owned.
Yes.
But the bones of it are probably okay, but it's, like, overgrown, smashed windows, and, I mean, there's kids that live all along there, and it just, it drives people nuts, and it would just be nice to get, and it's been, I feel like it was cold at that ribbon, so we're probably creeping up on a full year. I don't remember when it was, but.
And we did go walk through that house. We went with Hazelwood Initiative, and we couldn't take more than 3 steps inside because the inside of it is collapsed.
Oh, so is that a tear down then?
Yes, so it's not, because otherwise we would have been happy to acquire, stabilize.
So that one's a tear down.
Yeah, it's
then.
basically has no first floor.
Okay.
But you wouldn't know from the outside.
You wouldn't know from the outside.
And so
no.
we've got lots of those too that, unfortunately they are, at least with the current, because in theory you can save anything, right? It really just comes down to then what is the value of that home once you've invested that amount of money in it. And if it's not high enough to justify spending the $300,000 to completely rebuild the inside,
right?
It's a tear down,
right?
So,
but to your point earlier, I've called in at least twice to have that house either trash cleaned up, weeds cut, whatever. So that's twice now that like crews have gone and done a full, you know what I mean? And it's so that is, so it sounds like the clean and lean, well, that wouldn't have been a clean because it's our property, so it wouldn't have been a clean and lean, but but just having that list and making sure whether that's land bank or the demo team has that list, and just to prioritize those, as much as we can. Anyway,
Yes.
it's all about money, but
we'd be happy to do that. So
yeah,
it's
okay.
unfortunate. And it's on the city's shoulders because we can't sell that property, until it's torn down, it's an unsellable property.
Right.
And we're just, and then we've got hundreds of those, so.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I don't think I have any other questions. Actually I do have one. So because I remember talking about this initially when I first came to council, this idea of like, and maybe even we just talked about it now a little bit with the idea of like a city worker might want, I could see that if it's someone who's like a part-time landlord and, they do that, but has there been any evidence from your perspective of this being like I love the idea, but this idea that like someone is going to buy a house that's falling apart or at least, and then is going to move into it and fix it up as they live in it. Is that something that's happening?
It's happening.
Okay.
Now,
okay.
I will say, so I think my hope for our program, and I think this comes down to a capacity, we need to grow some capacity because there's a lot of education and outreach to be done to get people to the construction loan. It's an often misunderstood tool. But I would say that our buyer profile right now is usually someone that has a job that is either in or adjacent to the construction industry.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
Maybe they own like a flooring business. And they are, the cash is there to complete the full rehab, but they're typically cash buyers, and they work within the industry. They've done some other rehabs before, and they're interested in doing that for themselves with a land bank house.
Okay.
So that's what we've found so far.
Okay.
And I do think that we can I would really, really love if we could get some kind of, similar to the many homebuyer programs that happen throughout the city, but one that is specifically for people that would be interested in understanding how construction loans work, like mortgage rehab products, maybe even a 203K loan, knowing that we're here as a patient seller so they can really work through that while it's in the land bank's inventory. And just learning how to find and vet contractors, and as much work that we can provide up front. The bank requires a work plan, and our houses need big old complicated work plans because there's so much to do. So you could find a good contractor, but you really need an architect or engineer up front to get the work plan done. So there's just these pieces that I think we're continuing to work on, and they're all starting to come together. But the buyers are out there, and then we always have the back door of like tons of investor interest. I mean, these houses would all, they would sell in 10 seconds if we didn't use the 90-day homeowner preservation period. Lots and lots of investor interest in as-is houses across the city. So it's really just about removing those barriers up front so people can access the houses like a private market sale. We're listing them when they're actually ready to be sold.
That's interesting then. If there's investor, I like the word investor. I know a lot of these guys, that's not the first word that would come to mind when you meet them, but that's what they are, right? And that's interesting, like how you can balance that without like selling the whole neighborhood. Do you know what I mean? Like selling the whole neighborhood to three people, and now it's like, okay, well that's not okay. And then you end up in and our CDCs, by the way, have bought these bought out these large scale, slumlords, right? And now we're sort of working through, but it's like how to, but again, with could we sell to them with the caveats that it remain affordable for whatever? We can do that, right? We could say you can buy this, and maybe in 10 years, whatever, Knoxville or Scotch Bottom or whatever become the next hot neighborhood, but there's a deed restriction that it's like, well, you can't can't just flip these houses in. But as for right now, the rent is going to be affordable in those communities.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're seeing that with High Street. We had someone's pre-approval letter from the bank showed they assessed the value of the house to be $150,000, and that's less than what we sell our affordable. Now, granted, that's the one that has barely one bedroom, but that's less than what we typically sell our subsidized affordable owner-occupant houses for, and that's going to require almost no subsidy at all. So I think I think it's big and complicated, and it's not always intuitive that just saving some of these houses still gets us to our goal. And it's also why we move slow. We make sure we're starting out with community engagement before we start any kind of program in a neighborhood, because we don't want to spark those fears and concerns, because that's I think just through our slower moving sales process, we're giving lots of people opportunity to come in before we see those professional rehabbers. But we really need those folks too. And, I talk to, even before I worked at the land bank, everyone I can ever corner and tell them about how great mortgage rehab loans are. Most people want something that's turnkey.
Sure.
And so there's a balance, and I think we can do all of it and get to a point where we can kind of turn over this assumption that we all have to live next to vacant property in the city of Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for your questions. Thanks. Looks like we lost.
Okay, I was checking to see if the council president was still joining us. It doesn't appear that he is. I don't have a ton of questions. I think we talk at least once a week. Just want to thank you, for your leadership. I always often joke that, since I've been on the land bank, things have taken, I always say I'm the trade deadline acquisition. But, it was the work that you all have done. And, I'm just really proud to have played a very, very minute role in the effort to really begin to, change the narrative. Obviously the work has been important, but I think it's been as important because I still will get questions when people know I'm on the land bank board. I'm like, oh, that, whatever the narrative was 2 or 3 years ago. Unfortunately, there's still a perception, out in the community. So, particularly for us on the board, as well as, members who have had, transformational projects, even on a smaller scale, happen in a district, I think it's very important for all of us to begin to change that narrative and really talk about the tremendous strides under your leadership that the land bank has made. One thing that you had mentioned, I did want to point out that I was talking about at a community meeting in Lincoln Leamington over the weekend, was the work around the Teenie Harris House, which was a really unusual, role that the land bank played in, preserving the cultural heritage of Teenie Harris is one of the great African-American photographers, probably one of the great photographers in American history, but, really looked at as the foremost compiler of African-American life in the first half of the 20th century anywhere in the country, and being able to preserve that through the partnership, obviously shouts out to the county and all of the entities, obviously Teenie Harris's family as well, that came to bear, folks, from state government. I remember all of us standing outside when that marker was put in front of the house, but saying to ourselves, like, we don't, want this house to fall in private hands. We want to make sure that, this house remains, as a community treasure, and hopefully over the years it can, develop into something, where folks can go and learn more, about one of the most important photographers in the history of this country. So I did want to highlight, that win as well. And it's been, really a joy to work with you and bounce ideas off you, and find ways we can work together. I think the only question I have is I think a really interesting point that the council president made. That's why I was checking to see if he was still able to join us. I know the day, has gone long. The Housing Authority was here this morning, and the council president asked Director Binion, what engagement, has happened, and obviously I am on the board of the Housing Authority as well, and it was something I never thought about immediately. Like light bulbs, went off in my head. So I just wanted to ask you, from your perspective and your expertise of being in this position for several years now, what do you see as potential opportunities to partner, with the Housing Authority, particularly understanding that, I'm the one member on both boards, and obviously can play a liaison role, in helping pull those conversations together.
So I do want to mention, I think that something was brought up about St. Clair Village, and I do want to clarify, I think Director Binion might have been mixing the projects up, because the land bank is not involved in any projects in St. Clair Village. But my understanding is that the Housing Authority does own some vacant property, so we could always help them to sell that through our pilot residential rehab program if there's ever excess vacant property, like single family homes, and then we can help with site acquisition. What I say to all of my buyers, and I'm sure an entity like the Housing Authority knows this the best, is the land acquisition is the easy part, and it is your capital stack. It is fundraising and securing the funding for the project that is the hard part. So, any potential buyer or collaborative partner like the Housing Authority, if they have funds available, if they have a pending project, we'd be more than happy to do site assemblage, whether it's pulling from the URA, city inventory, or foreclosing on tax delinquent property. We could assist with site acquisition, title clearance, and kind of preparing that property for whatever that development project might be. I think would be the two main ways. Or if they ever wanted us to sell them, we could sell them vacant property too. If they're looking for property to rehab, I think one of the challenges with our system is that for so long we've been feeding our affordable pipeline just the toughest properties that need, $150,000 plus of subsidy because they've sat for a long time. So, and I think that's kind of what we're trying to turn the tables with a little bit with pilot residential rehab, is to say sometimes let's give the tough ones, let's let the market take care of those, and let's really work to try and get some of these properties that haven't sat so long into the affordable housing pipeline so they're less of a lift. So I would say that would be the caveat with, looking to sell vacant property. I think I was hearing some highlights from my staff that were tuning in, that they were saying their sweet spot is like $50,000 to $60,000 of a rehab budget, and we have nothing that we can access right now that's in that condition. So
yeah, I believe he said it could go higher. We probably have to.
Okay, yeah. So I think if we can make those things line up, there could be flow in either direction, whether it's structures or vacant land, and we would be very happy to partner and help with any of those items.
Yeah, and just for clarity for the public, I believe that Council President, was speaking along those lines, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Mr. Binion said it could go up higher, because I think he even went into the six-figure number, but the idea would be kind of part of their, for lack of a better term, I forget what it's called, but a kind of a residential rehab program. They are acquiring properties, they are rehabbing them, and even if it goes into the lower six figures, obviously that's a lot more affordable than $550,000 for a brand new unit. So immediately being a director on the URA board, Council President's light bulb went off, and he mentioned that, talking about potentially the Housing Authority acquiring property off of the land bank, that potential rehabs. I mean, very similar to Niagara Street and some of the properties that you showed us, in the slide deck, could potentially fall into that sweet spot potentially.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that would be wonderful for us, because if we have a buyer that has the financial capacity to just take on a consistent pipeline of rehabbing vacant and abandoned property, that would be incredibly helpful. That'd be a wonderful program. And to really help us move through, what's in the 3 taxing bodies inventory and what's out there that's still vacant and tax delinquent. Yeah, be great.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm sure that will be a conversation that will continue. But again, thank you, for your work, and Josh as well, coming on board for about you're not that new anymore.
9 months.
Yeah, you've been around for a while.
So I'm sure many people recognize Josh because he was stolen from the CDBG office. So apologies. We also have a really stellar third staffer who we stole from the Housing Authority, named Devin Shirey, who's been really incredible, helping us stay on track with our board meetings and keeping us moving along. So
you're making,
so we've got some Housing Authority connections. We're here. We're ready to partner.
You're making all kinds of acquisitions. We may need you in the front office of the Pittsburgh Pirates. No disrespect to Travis Williams and company, but we need that director Stadelman spirit. In the off season, it's that time. So with that, if there's no other comments or statements or any references to the Pittsburgh Pirates hot stove season, I will ask for a motion to recess this meeting.
So moved.
Now we are recessed.